Hello everybody, it's Miranda here with another Live with Prima tutorial, and today I'm going to be showing you how I am creating this frame that I've had for quite some time using the amazing new waxes from Finnabair, and she has a whole range of the metallics, and then there's some opal magic ones and some more antique ones, and they are just super fun to play with. So I am breaking out a frame that I had in my stash for forever, like I said, which is the rose one, and then the smaller one I'm using is another new release, and that is from Frank Garcia Memory Hardware. So I am just going across the entire frame with heavy gesso, and I ended up doing 3 coats, but I just didn't want to bore you and show that whole process. So you're getting the idea here. Just make sure you get in all the nooks and crannies if you have a frame like this that has texture to it, but a regular frame would work, just as well, just as long as you're adding some texture on there like I'm doing here with the crackle medium. Excuse my thumb, by the way. I did have a boo-boo and I have stitches in it, so I keep it covered up throughout this, but you may see me switching band-aids and stuff, and I apologize for that, but it's one of those things. I got cut and I have to keep crafting. So I'm adding that white texture paste here, and it is a beautiful crackle finish if you let it dry naturally. So I'm applying it pretty thick because, with any crackle medium, the thicker you apply it, the bigger crackles you get. And these frames took it very well. And I did not show this, but I just sewed this frame as well, just to give that texture medium something to really tack to. I tend to clear gesso or white gesso everything because it really makes it able to grab a hold of whatever you're adding on top. So I wanted to go in and add that crackle texture on some of these flowers as well. And I had a vision for this project and it didn't turn out how I wanted, but you know what? That happens, and I just kept working at it and I'm happy with the result. I wanted it to hang in our bedroom and the colors got a little off, so it's now going to go in the scrapbook room, and that's completely fine. That's the beauty of mixed media. Things go wrong. Sometimes they're happy accidents. Sometimes it just changes altogether on you. And you just roll with it, and that's what I'm doing here. And I even cracked the memory hardware frame and had to super glue it back together, and at that point I was like, okay, I quit. This is just not meant to be, but I kept going and I glued it back together and I just kept going. So I'm also using a paintbrush with that texture paste instead of a spatula or palette knife, because that'll really get into those little nooks and crannies that the palette knife can't really reach. I'm using the rose quartz paper. There's one sheet here like this that just has beautiful little sayings and quotes, and you can see I'm cutting a little outside of the lines, that way it fits in the frame and I have something to tape on the back and it's not exactly going to fit in there. It's a little overlapped on the back, I guess I'm trying to say. And I'm going to my go-to technique. It would not be a Miranda project without alcohol ink, so I'm spritzing it and then just adding latte and caramel alcohol inks. And it really brings out those crackles very well. And the waxes do too, which you'll see in a minute. But it wouldn't be a project by me if I did not add alcohol ink somewhere on there. So that's what we're doing here. So I'm adding the alcohol ink, and I try to not heat set it when I'm using mediums, but sometimes it is necessary, but I try to let things dry naturally as much as I can, so that's why it's like stopping and going and stopping and going. Now I'm breaking out the new rust set from Finnabair, which is amazing. I love patina, and that's what this rust set is all about. So you get this really pretty green, and I'm not doing this in the order that it recommends. I'm just doing this in the way that I wanted to do it. You know, there are instructions, and Finnabair is releasing these videos, or, you know, Prima's releasing videos showing how to get the best results and the best patina look. But I'm just, you know, having fun with it and playing around with it. And a lot of us on the design team are doing it different ways and achieving a lot of different results, and they're all very beautiful. So I went in with that like minty green color first, and then the copper, which I had some on the little tab that comes off the lid there. So I'm just dipping my paintbrush on there, and I'm going right where I did the alcohol ink, because I felt like that was enough brown and I didn't want to add any more. So I'm just going in there and making it shine and sparkle where I put the alcohol ink. And you want to make sure you pay attention to the edges of your frames and stuff, and everything's covered. You don't want to like have white edges and, you know, not pay attention to that. So this frame is so beautiful. It has that bow on the top that's just gorgeous. Now these are the new paints from Finnabair, and they are called Sparks. And that is because they are amazingly sparkly. I have 3 colors. This one is called, oh goodness, I cannot think of the name right now. I'll think of it in a minute, but it's in the supply list down below. And it is so beautiful, and it's just like so coppery and beautiful. So I am adding that just down in the cracks and the crevices, and that texture paste is dry now, so I can go in there with all my mediums and it's not going to alter that. So I'm just kind of going all the way around with that. Beautiful, super sparkly. It's like the Art Alchemy paints, just like on steroids or something, just super, you know, sparkled out. So I'm spraying it with water and just moving my frame around so that it really spreads and gets down in there. And I'm going to do a lot of layers, so some stuff gets covered up, and that's completely fine. We go in at the end and highlight, and that's kind of what mixed media is all about. So I just decided to just add the colors I wanted, stay in that same family, and it did end up turning out a little darker than I wanted, and that's okay. So I'm just adding more of the sparks there and tapping off with a baby wipe. And I'm, ooh, sorry for the shakiness there. I should have edited that out, but I forgot to. Now we are going in with the Dragonfly Blue, which is the second edition of the Color Bloom sprays, which I thought that was all I was going to add, was this blue and have that sparks showing, and that was going to be it. And it just wasn't doing it for me. It was just kind of going down into the cracks and not really popping enough. And I was going to add the wax, of course, but I didn't want to add any other color besides that Dragonfly Blue. And then have that frame kind of have a different look in the center. But, you know, things change. So I'm adding that Dragonfly Blue there as well, which the other color that comes in the rust paste is pretty much the same color as this Dragonfly Blue, which you'll see me use in just a second. I'm grabbing the other sparks there, and that's called Fairy Wings, and I am using it to kind of highlight the greenery, the green leaves, and just going around and painting that on there. A lot of it gets covered up when I start doing the wax and melting it all around, but I did want to go ahead and make sure some of the leaves showed at the end, which is what I was going for. I knew at least some of them would show up with that beautiful green color. It's so shimmery and so pretty. Finnabair really knocked the new releases out of the park. The waxes, the new crystal beads, the new sparks, so many wonderful things. Now I'm going in with alcohol ink because it really gets in those crevices very easily. It's got a very thin little tip there, and it's just so easy to get inside of all those little nooks and crannies. So that's what I'm doing there. And you can see how that blue really just kind of got muted and kind of washed out. So I knew I was going to have to go in with more than just the wax on top of that in order to really make it look vibrant. And I do have a glass surface, so that's why you see me wipe a lot. It does get messy as we progress. I end up stopping and not cleaning it as I go. So now I'm using that blue finally, which is a very beautiful color blue. And I'm almost just using it like a paint and just going all the way over my entire thing with that blue patina set and the rust paste. And it has a grit to it. The two bluish colors have a grit to them, and the copper color does not. It's like a more smooth, almost like the Art Alchemy paints. So those two have a nice grit, and again, I'm not doing this the way you're supposed to. I'm not even letting them dry in between, and it's going to look a little muddy, but you know what? I just was in a hurry, and I was just going for it. So I'm adding that copper on top now in just different areas. So right now it just looks kind of muddy and icky and just not very pretty, but in the end it turns out looking much better. So after it dried, it did look better. Now I'm adding some 3D matte gel, and I'm going to use the new crystal beads in the 1mm size, the smaller size of the two. It comes in 1mm and 3. So I'm going to use those here, and I'm using 3D matte gel and my finger just to add it in different areas, and then I'm going to sprinkle it on top. And I'm right near the edge of my table, so I'm not going to use anything to catch those bees, but you'll be like, why is she doing that? But I do pour them back. I just, use my hand to scrape them down to the edge and go back in the bottle. So no wasting was done here, although it may look like it. But I was being pretty careful at first, but then I got a little heavy-handed and some went on my table. But that's okay. I really like having a glass work area. It's very easy to correct errors or clean up messes. So that is the Opal Magic in the Gold Rush color, and I just put that mica powder there because I knew I was going to use it. And then here's all the waxes, and they're so beautiful. So these are the 3 main ones I knew I wanted to use. I opened that one, and as you can see there, it's very creamy. So some had kind of gotten on the side, and I just used my finger and rubbed it right back down in there. And I'm going all the way around with my finger and just rubbing it on the edges and different areas. And I'll use a paintbrush too, and it may seem like, oh, she's using a lot, but I promise you this stuff goes a long way. And the only reason it looks like there's a big dent there in the paint is because I'm pushing it down. But I rub my finger at the end and it still stays about the same level. You're really not using as much as you think you are. Like, this is going to last me a very long time. So I'm just going all the way around. And I love to use beeswax and stuff. And when I first got this wax, I tried to heat set it and see what kind of results I could get and if it would melt. And it did, which made me very happy. And I really like the smell of it. So, and I'm not alone on that. There's a couple other girls who like the smell of it too so far. So now I'm going in with the old silver, which I love. And I have used that one a ton. Even on my art venture project, I use that same one right there. And you can see how much I still have. So it's just, they really last forever. So I'm going in with my paintbrush and just going all the way around my little flowers there. And if you don't have a frame like this, I even thought about gluing Prima flowers all the way around a plain frame and gessoing them, or even putting that oh goodness, what's the name of it? The sculpture medium, and just making them really rigid. And I may end up doing that in the future just as an experiment to see how that would look. This one is the Opal Magic one, which is so beautiful. So it looks like it's golden, but it turns greenish too. It's like a two-toned magical thing. And if you put this on black, it's going to show up very green. Finnabair, actually, go to her blog, and she has a video series showcasing these waxes. And she goes into really beautiful projects and details that I just can't quite explain. So here I am with my heat gun, and you can see that wax just melting everywhere. I hope you can see it. And it is so beautiful when it just starts melting. And she says in the video, and it's very true, it's still wet, so it's going to rub off. You don't want to touch it too much when it's still wet. But once this wax is dry, it's not going to move anywhere. So I'm using that Opal Magic right there, the gold Opal Magic, and just highlighting a few areas. And a lot of things weren't quite dry yet, so you'll see me stop in a second, and then I'll wait for everything to dry, and I go back in with more and just continue to go around. But I did cut that out. So now I'm going in with some more of the gold, and you can see me being very heavy-handed with it. I am putting a ton on there so that way I can melt it. I wanted more melting, more wax kind of flowing around on the frame. And I love doing that. It's so fun. I love that technique. It's super fun. You want to be careful, make sure your surface can handle the heat. But I'm trying to hold it up to the camera there so you can see it just starts bubbling, and if you put enough it'll start, like running down, and you'll see me do it to the spoon at the end and really see like that wax will just start moving around in tons of ways, and it's just so fun. So the heat tool does get in the way a little bit, and I'm sorry for that, but I'm just going around the entire frame and melting that golden wax that I just applied and letting it really get down in the crevices and cracks and stuff. Just letting it bubble up and do its thing. Alright, so now I'm just taping that rose quartz saying, which says doubt your doubt, and I just loved that. It was going to go on my gallery wall in my bedroom, but now it's going to go on my gallery wall in my scrapbook room, which is just as fine. So I'm just holding it on there and seeing how it looks so far. I've got some flowers here, and of course I'm putting alcohol ink in the center because I tend to always do that. I didn't want to give away. I have some techniques using the wax that I'm doing at my art venture show, so I didn't want to use all of the techniques on this video. I saved some, and it looks like I don't think you can really see the paint there, but there's a big daub of white gesso there watered down. So if you're like, where is she getting the paint from? I know it just kind of blends in. So I'm just dipping it in there with my paintbrush and just making splatters all over that, just to kind of add more texture and make it look a little more whited out and really pretty. So I'm just going all the way around doing that until I'm happy with the look. Now these are the new molds from IOD. These are the little keyholes, and there are so many on that. If you're going to get one, I definitely suggest that. So the first one I'm going to layer these, which is really cool about these. Some of these just layer beautifully. So the first one I did alcohol ink. The second one I'm going to use the golden wax. And I used my finger at first, but it can't really get into all those crevices. So I'm going to grab a paintbrush, and that will help me get into all of those areas very easily. And again, I'm going to end up putting a ton of extra wax on there and then melting it because it really makes that keyhole look like just legit metal. It makes it look so beautiful and like real metal. And I really love that effect. Alright, so I'm going to add the excess now, just in different areas. You just add like little globs here and there. And then I was like, oh, I'll just touch up the frame as I go. So I'm adding a little bit more of that gold to the frame. I just felt like it needed it. So I'm hitting some of those petals with the gold wax. Alright, now I was heating it on the glass table, but I figured you couldn't see it. So I put it on this white sheet, and hopefully you can see there the bubbling that goes on, and it really just looks beautiful and like real metal once it's dry. So, and it's hot, so you want to let it dry before you do that. Now in the background there, I just used a paintable that was on my desk, and I don't even know what line it's from. It's just one of those paintable sheets that you get from, like, you know, the different collections. So I'm sorry, but it's just a paintable. I just wanted something back there, basically. So I'm putting the wax in the center of that spoon, and then I'm also taking the crystal micro beads, and those are the 3 millimeter, so they're bigger. And I'm patting it down in there, and then I'm going to heat it up, and you guys are going to see it just like really melt this time, and like I almost poured the whole thing out, and that would have been a huge bummer. But it gets so melted. You can see there it's just moving, and it's so pretty. And again, once it dries, it's not going to go anywhere. You can add a coat of sealant on there just to make sure if this is going to be like a present or something for someone. But once the wax dries, it doesn't go anywhere. So I am just stacking those keyholes on top of each other right there, and making sure none of the glue is seeping through. And I'm going to adhere it to the top of my frame here, right below the bow, and onto the paper in the center of that little foiled doily. I love the fact that Prima is now doing foil accents on their 12 by 12 papers. It's so pretty. All right, so now I'm going to use, this is the cardboard that my Chaw goodies came in, and I am just adding, I think I did 5 layers to get it up to the level I needed it to be. And I am using just plain white thread, a thin thread, a very thin thread, and I'm just adding it everywhere on that piece of cardboard and just using 3D matte gel. And I go in a few places on the outside and make sure, you know, it's kind of secured and it's not going to go anywhere. It'll have some movement, but I just didn't want it to be crazy. So after I adhered that down, I got out some of the paintable tags, and I'm going to add some wax on the edges of those, and it takes it very well. Now, not all paper takes the wax well, I have noticed, but the paintables take it very well. And you can mix the colors, so I'm adding a little bit of silver on top, and it looks really pretty. So some I do just silver, and the other two I do silver and gold. Okay, so once I have those ready to go, I'm going to adhere those down underneath the frame. I'm also adding it on the spoon there, and that is metal, so it's a non-porous surface, and it will stay on there beautifully. It looks beautiful on the metal. It just really highlights all those raised areas. That's a pretty intricate little spoon there, which has been in my stash for years, I might add. Now those are the little Rosie Bell trim pieces, and I am just using those throughout. They're going to be like my hole reinforcers on my tag, and I put it in the center there. So I'm adding the little pieces of tag underneath where the frame will be. So right on top of that last cardboard piece, I'm just kind of staggering them, and what I did is I picked the areas that weren't my favorite, and that's where I put my tags. So I kind of covered up the areas that I didn't think were the prettiest, and then I didn't want to cover up the prettiest areas. So that was my method there. I just kind of put them where I didn't feel like it looked as good as other areas. There's tons of ways you can like disguise mistakes and stuff in mixed media, and I love that about it. All right, now I can finally add my a very liberal amount of 3D matte gel. I don't want this going anywhere, so I use 3D matte gel on all of it. I wanted it to be very strong and not go anywhere, so that's what I'm using, and I'm just lining it up and making sure it's nice and straight there, and making sure I rub down the center so that there's no bubbles coming up. And then once I get that arranged how I like it, I can go in with a few flowers. And that's basically all the embellishments I used. I used 4 flowers. And I have the item number for these down below. I don't know if these are, I think these are non-collection flowers. These are just extra little prima flowers. So I'm adding those on there. Couldn't quite get good contact with that one, so you can see me kind of finagling with it a little bit. And then I add that other beautiful minty colored one down in the corner. Again, using 3D matte gel because it is so strong. It's the strongest adhesive ever. Alright, so then I'm going to add one more in the top corner, and that's all the embellishments I added. And again, you could use the flowers to kind of cover up an area that didn't turn out how you liked. So this one I'm going to really push under the corner there, so it's like barely, you know, kind of poking out. And I should have cut it in half on second thought, because, you know, that's a beautiful flower and I could have used it on something else. But so I'm just sticking it down in there and using my scissors to kind of push it further. And my last step is to add my spoon, and that is it, y'all. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and got a glimpse of some inspiration on what to do with these beautiful new waxes. They're so fun to play with, you guys. You're going to love them. Definitely a must-have item of all the new releases. I do believe the waxes are my favorite. The rust paste is beautiful. Everything's so amazing. You guys are just going to be so happy with all the new releases. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, leave them down below and I will answer them very promptly. And have a wonderful new year. Happy New Year. And let's let 2017 just be amazing. So happy creating, everyone. Bye.